It was a quiet morning in the city. The streets were not crowded yet, and the soft sunlight was just beginning to touch the tops of the buildings. Keanu Reeves was driving slowly, enjoying the calm before the usual rush of the day. He didn't have any plans to meet anyone, and he just wanted to take a small break from the noise of his life. Driving gave him a moment to think, a moment to breathe, and sometimes a moment to notice things most people would pass by without a second thought. As he approached a red light, something caught his attention. On the side of the road, tucked in a small parking spot, was an old, dusty car. The kind of car that looked like it had been through years of struggles. The paint faded and a little rusty, the tires worn down from long, hard use. Normally, a car like that might not have even registered in someone's mind, but something about this one made him slow down a little more than usual. Inside the car, he could see movement. At first, he thought it might just be someone sitting and waiting, but then he noticed the small bundle in the woman's arms. It was a baby, no older than a few months, wrapped in a tiny, thin blanket. The woman looked exhausted, her eyes carrying a weight that told stories of sleepless nights and endless worry. Her hands were busy trying to soothe the baby, who was crying softly, its tiny face scrunching up with every wail. Keanu felt a pull in his chest. He had seen hardship in his life and on movie sets, in people he had met, and in the stories friends had shared with him. But seeing it like this, so raw and unguarded, struck a nerve in a way that he couldn't ignore. He didn't think about what he would do first, or if it was his responsibility. His mind simply focused on one thought: that woman and that baby needed help. The light turned green, but he didn't move immediately. He watched as the woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat, trying to cover the baby with the thin blanket. The car was small, not very clean, and clearly not a place made for comfort or warmth. Her eyes flicked toward the street, probably hoping someone would pass by, but also wary of attention. She seemed tense, a mixture of fear and embarrassment that came naturally when someone is living a life. No one should have to live. Keanu made a quiet decision. He slowed his car and pulled over a few feet ahead, far enough not to startle her, but close enough to show he was stopping on purpose. He took a deep breath and got out of his car. Every step he took felt intentional but gentle. He didn't want to scare her. He didn't want to make her feel like she was being judged. The woman noticed him walking toward the car. Her body tensed. The baby's cries seemed to get louder, and she turned her face toward the dashboard, almost as if hiding. Keanu stopped a few feet away, giving her space, and spoke softly. "Hi, I hope I'm not bothering you. I wanted to see if you're okay." There was a pause. The woman's eyes flicked toward him cautiously. She didn't speak right away. She seemed unsure if she could trust a stranger, unsure if anyone would care about her situation. She didn't want to make a mistake by answering, and yet, something in his calm voice, in the kindness that radiated without asking for anything, made her hesitate. Finally, in a low, hesitant voice, she said, I'm fine. But her words didn't match her eyes. Her eyes told a different story, one of exhaustion, hunger, and worry. Keanu noticed immediately. He crouched slightly to appear less threatening, keeping his eyes soft, his hands visible so she could see he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to be fine. I can see you're having a hard time. Can I help?" She swallowed hard. Her lips trembled for a moment. Pride, fear, and embarrassment all seemed to fight for control of her voice. I don't want trouble," she whispered, as if she had been conditioned to believe that asking for help was dangerous. Keanu shook his head slowly. "You're not causing trouble. I just want to help. You have a baby with you. That's the important thing. You and the baby deserve help." Something in her chest seemed to relax slightly. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, someone saw her without judgment, without pity, without using her situation for gossip or attention. She gave a small nod but didn't say anything yet. Keanu could see the tiredness in her posture, how she leaned slightly to one side, holding the baby tightly. Almost like she was trying to shield both of them from the world outside. He took another step closer, carefully, and spoke again. "Would you like to get some food? Maybe somewhere warm?" "I can wait with you," just until you feel safe." Her eyes widened. No one had ever said this to her before. Most people either ignored her or gave awkward, uncomfortable looks. Some had even said unkind things. She had grown used to silence, and this offer of simple kindness seemed almost unreal. She hesitated, then nodded slowly, unsure if she could trust this stranger, yet feeling something in her gut that told her it was okay. Keanu smiled softly. He didn't say much more. Sometimes words aren't needed. His quiet presence alone seemed to ease her nerves slightly. He stepped back a little to give her space to breathe and unbuckle herself if needed. The baby's crying quieted just a little, maybe sensing that someone was calm and safe nearby. For a few minutes they simply stayed like that. Keanu didn't rush. He didn't push. He simply allowed her to feel seen, to feel that for this moment her struggles were noticed and someone cared. The city moved around them, cars passing by, people walking without noticing the small scene on the side of the road. But for this woman and her baby, and for Keanu, time seemed to slow. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't even have money for a meal." The words came out with a mix of shame and relief, as if admitting it made it real and also opened the door for help. Keanu nodded. "That's okay. Don't worry about that. I've got it covered. Let's just get you both some warm food and a little rest." She blinked, tears welling up in her eyes, and looked at him, almost afraid it might be a dream. She had been surviving on hope alone for days. And now someone, a stranger, a man she had probably seen in movies, was offering her help without conditions, without questions, without judgment. Keanu helped her gently as she got out of the car, taking care not to startle the baby. He moved slowly, giving her a chance to adjust, to feel safe in his presence. The baby, sensing the calm around him, stopped crying for a moment and stared at Keanu with wide eyes. Keanu smiled softly at the tiny face. Feeling a connection to this small life in his hands, they walked a few steps toward a nearby cafe. The morning sunlight was growing stronger, but the air was still chilly. Keanu opened the door and gestured for her to enter first. She stepped inside, still holding her baby tightly, and found a small booth where they could sit. He pulled out his wallet quietly, signaling that this was taken care of, and asked the staff to bring something warm for both the mother and the baby. The woman looked at him, unable to find words. She simply nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her baby, feeling warmth not just from the food, but from the simple act of being seen and cared for. Keanu didn't sit immediately. He waited, standing near the table, giving her space but remaining present. He made small talk gently, asking about the baby's age, her day, making her smile faintly despite the exhaustion. The sound of that smile, small but genuine, was enough for him. For the first time in days, the woman felt a flicker of hope. Not the kind that comes from promises or empty words, but the kind that comes from someone truly noticing you, someone offering help simply because it's the right thing to do. She looked at Keanu, a man who had millions in his life. And yet here he was, treating her with humanity, with patience, with kindness that felt pure and uncalculated. They sat in quiet together, letting the morning slowly pass. The world outside was busy and fast, but here, inside that small cafe, it was just a mother, a baby, and a man who cared enough to stop, look, and act. Keanu didn't ask for recognition. He didn't take pictures. He didn't even mention his name. He just offered help, and in doing so, created a moment that would stay in her heart forever. That morning was more than just a meeting. It was a reminder that sometimes one small act of kindness can change everything. For the woman, it was the beginning of hope. For the baby, it was a touch of warmth and safety. And for Keanu, it was another quiet moment in life where he could make a difference without fanfare or applause. And though the day outside went on, busy and indifferent, inside that cafe something shifted. Life, even in its smallest gestures, had a way of giving a new start, a fresh breath of air, and a moment of humanity that could never be forgotten. The cafe was quiet, with soft music playing in the background and the gentle hum of early morning conversations. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the air. For the woman, Every sense seemed heightened, her stomach rumbled quietly. Her hands shook slightly from cold, and her heart still raced from the encounter outside. She held her baby closer, the little bundle warm against her chest, feeling the tiny breaths and the soft, uneven heartbeat of a life she was desperate to protect. Keanu Reeves stayed near the table, patient and calm. He didn't rush her, didn't try to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. He knew that moments like these were delicate. Trust couldn't be demanded. It had to grow naturally, slowly, with every small gesture showing that he genuinely cared. He asked softly, "Would you like me to order something for you? Maybe some warm food for you and the baby?" The woman hesitated. She was so used to surviving on very little that accepting help, even when offered kindly, felt uncomfortable. She shook her head slightly, almost out of habit, almost out of shame. Keanu noticed immediately. He crouched slightly, keeping his voice gentle and steady. "It's okay. You don't have to worry about money. I just want to make sure you both have something warm to eat. Nothing more than that." Her eyes searched his face, trying to find any hidden motive, any reason why a stranger would care so much. There was nothing. Only kindness, calmness, and patience. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she seemed on the verge of tears. Finally, she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Keanu smiled softly. "Good, let's get some food then. You and your baby deserve it." He waved at a waiter and ordered 2 meals, one for the woman and one for herself. He also asked for a small bottle of warm milk for the baby. The woman watched quietly, unsure of how to react. No one had ever done this for her before. Most people either ignored her or gave awkward looks as if she were invisible or less than human. But here was someone, famous or not, treating her like she mattered. While they waited for the food, Keanu made gentle conversation. He didn't press her with questions or rush her to tell her story. Instead, he asked small things: how old the baby was, if she had slept well, if there was anything she needed immediately. His questions were simple, not intrusive, but they showed that he cared about their well-being. The woman hesitated at first, unsure if she could open up. But slowly she began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. She explained that she had lost her job recently. The bills had piled up, and there was no family nearby to help. She had nowhere else to go, and had been sleeping in the car for several nights. She spoke of her fears, of the nights when she worried about the baby catching a cold, about not knowing what to do when hunger gnawed at them both. Keanu listened quietly, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. He didn't react with pity or shock. He didn't offer empty words or force comfort. He simply listened. Listening is sometimes the kindest act anyone can do. And at that moment it was exactly what she needed, the baby. Sensing the calm energy around them, stopped crying for a while and stared at Keanu with wide, curious eyes. He smiled softly, never trying to grab attention, simply letting the baby feel safe. The woman's eyes softened as well, noticing that someone outside her family genuinely cared for her child's safety and comfort. When the food arrived, Keanu gently encouraged her to eat first. She hesitated but eventually took a small bite, careful with her hands trembling from hunger. The warmth of the food, the taste, and the act of sitting safely inside a cafe for the first time in days made her feel a little lighter, a little less burdened. Keanu took a seat nearby, still close enough to provide comfort but far enough to give her personal space. He sipped his coffee quietly and kept an eye on the baby, who had now calmed down, curling slightly in the mother's arms. After a few minutes, the woman began to speak more freely. She told him about her hopes, how she wanted to provide a better life for her child, how she had tried to hold on even when it seemed impossible. She shared her fears about the nights alone in the car, how she worried someone would break in, how she feared the baby might get sick, and how she often cried silently, hoping no one would hear. Keanu nodded gently, offering no judgment, only understanding. "You've been carrying a lot on your own," he said softly. "It's okay to feel tired, scared, and unsure. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever recognized her struggle without pity or judgment. The simple acknowledgement that her feelings were valid felt like a weight lifting from her shoulders. He asked if there was anything she needed immediately, a place to rest. Warm clothes, diapers for the baby. She hesitated, almost afraid to ask. She had learned that asking for help often brought disappointment, judgment, or rejection. Keanu waited patiently, letting her choose what to say, never pushing. Finally, she whispered, I just need a safe place to sleep tonight. Somewhere the baby and I won't be in danger. Keanu nodded. We'll figure that out. You don't have to worry about it now. Right now, you just focus on eating and we'll take care of the rest together. For the first time in days, she felt hope. Hope that wasn't just a fragile thought she had to protect, but hope that someone could genuinely help her, someone she could trust. The baby stirred in her arms and she smiled faintly, feeling warmth from the food, the cafe, and the human connection she hadn't experienced in a long time. As they finished their meals, Keanu asked if she wanted to step outside for a moment to get some fresh air. She nodded, still holding the baby close. Outside, the city was alive, cars moving, people rushing to their destinations. Yet in that small space, it was calm. He walked beside her, keeping pace, giving her space, yet making it clear she wasn't alone. Keanu then spoke gently about temporary options, a hotel, a shelter, or a friend of a friend who could offer safe space. She listened quietly, unsure if she dared to hope for such things. He didn't pressure her, didn't demand a decision. He simply offered options, showing that she had choices, that there were ways to get through the immediate struggle. She finally whispered, I don't even know where to start. I've been so lost. Keanu smiled softly, understanding completely. It's okay. We start small, one step at a time. Right now, the first step is safe food and warmth. The next steps we'll figure out together. You're not alone anymore. The woman blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of shame or sadness, but a tear of relief, of realizing that someone genuinely cared for her and her baby. For the first time in days, she felt seen, valued, and safe. Keanu didn't ask for her to tell the whole story of her life. He didn't pry into painful details she wasn't ready to share. He simply stayed, offered guidance, and most importantly, offered human compassion, a rare, powerful gift for someone who had been invisible to the world. The morning passed slowly. But with each passing minute, the tension in the woman's shoulders eased slightly. The baby, once restless and crying, now slept lightly in her arms, feeling the calm energy that surrounded them. The cafe staff glanced over, noticing the quiet dignity in the scene. No cameras, no fanfare. Just a man and a woman sharing a moment of human kindness. Keanu then asked gently if she would like a few necessities, a blanket, some diapers, and formula for the baby. Her eyes widened at the suggestion, almost disbelieving. I don't want to impose, she whispered. You're not imposing, Keanu said softly. You and your baby deserve this. No one should ever have to sleep hungry or cold. Let me help. He stepped away briefly to make a call, arranging for the items to be delivered to her immediately. When he returned, he handed them over quietly. She hesitated, then accepted, tears in her eyes, clutching the blanket and supplies as if they were the most precious things she had ever held. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to breathe fully. Not the shallow breaths of someone constantly worrying, but deep, full breaths of relief and hope. She looked at the man who had changed the tone of her morning, who had seen her when the world hadn't. And she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. Keanu didn't ask her to thank him, didn't linger unnecessarily. He simply stayed long enough to ensure she and the baby were comfortable, safe, and had the basics to get through the next few hours. Then quietly he excused himself, leaving her with the warmth of the cafe, the food, and a sense of hope that had been nearly lost. As she watched him leave, she whispered softly to the baby, "Someone cared about us today." Someone really cared? The baby stirred as if understanding and snuggled closer into her arms. That morning marked the beginning of something new. Not because of money or fame, but because of a simple act of compassion. Keanu Reeves didn't need recognition, didn't need applause. He needed only to act, to see, and to help. And in doing so, he gave a struggling mother and her baby a glimpse of hope, warmth, and safety, a gift far more valuable than words could ever describe. And in that moment, the woman realized something important. Life, no matter how hard or lonely, could still bring kindness in the most unexpected forms. Sometimes it arrived not as a grand gesture, but as a simple, patient presence, a man willing to stop, listen, and care when no one else did. After leaving the cafe, Keanu Reeves didn't just return to his car and go on with his day. Something inside him wouldn't let him walk away. He knew that a warm meal and a few supplies could help for a short while, but the real struggle was what came next. A mother and her baby, living in a car, could not survive on temporary kindness alone. They needed stability, safety, and support to even begin to rebuild their lives. Keanu quietly took out his phone and called his assistant. He didn't want attention or media involvement. This was not a story to be told in headlines or to make anyone look good. It was a human life in need, and he was determined to help. He explained the situation simply: a mother, very young, struggling with a baby, living in a car, no immediate help or support. Could they find a safe place for her to stay tonight, even temporarily? While arrangements were being made, Keanu stayed close to ensure she and her baby were comfortable. He returned to the cafe, gently asking her if she wanted to take a short walk while waiting. She nodded, holding the baby tightly. The city was alive, but in their small world it felt quiet. Keanu didn't speak much. He just walked at her pace, letting her feel in control. The woman finally began to talk more freely. She admitted that she had tried shelters before, but was often turned away because of limited space, rules she couldn't meet, or the fear of being separated from her baby. She spoke of nights when she stayed in the car, wrapped in layers of blankets, listening to the rain hit the roof, afraid the baby would wake up cold or hungry. Every detail she shared, small as it seemed, painted a picture of exhaustion and constant worry that no one should ever endure. Keanu listened with full attention, nodding occasionally, never interrupting. He understood that listening itself was a form of help. By giving her this space to speak, to release some of the weight she had been carrying alone, he offered more than just material aid. He gave dignity and understanding, which often mattered more than anything else. Soon his assistant called back. They had arranged a nearby hotel with a small, private room that could accommodate both her and the baby safely. Keanu shared the news quietly, trying to gauge her reaction without overwhelming her. She looked at him, eyes wide, not quite believing that this could be real. A room? Just for us?" she asked softly. "Yes," Keanu said with a gentle smile. "You and your baby can have a warm, safe place tonight. No one will bother you. You just need to get there and rest." Her lips trembled, and for a moment she didn't speak. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't just tears of relief, they were tears of disbelief, tears of hope returning after a long time of fear and struggle. She had never imagined anyone would go out of their way to help her in such a real, tangible way. Keanu offered his arm, not in a formal way, but in a way that showed support and guidance. She accepted, walking carefully with him as they made their way to the car. He helped her buckle the baby safely in a car seat, ensuring comfort and warmth. As he drove, he kept the conversation light, talking about simple things: the baby's age, the weather, the soft noises the city made in the morning. His calm presence helped ease her nerves, replacing fear with a sense of security she hadn't felt in days. When they arrived at the hotel, Keanu spoke softly to the staff, explaining that this was an urgent situation and that she and her baby needed privacy and care. The staff, understanding the delicate nature, immediately offered assistance, showing empathy and patience. The woman felt a wave of relief as she entered the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could take off her coat, set the baby down safely, and breathe without fear. Keanu quietly guided her through the small room, showing where the bed was, where she could place the baby's things, and where the essentials would be. He had arranged a small basket with diapers, wipes, warm clothes, and baby formula. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the first few days. The woman's hands shook as she took it in, realizing that someone had thought about their needs so carefully. "Thank you," she whispered, looking at him, still unable to fully grasp what had happened. I don't know how to repay you. Keanu shook his head gently. You don't need to repay me. Just rest tonight. That's all that matters. You and your baby deserve a good night's sleep. She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. The baby stirred in her arms, and she held it closer, feeling its warmth, its soft breathing, and the peace of being somewhere safe. She looked at Keanu, wishing she could find words that matched the depth of her gratitude, but none seemed enough. Keanu stayed just long enough to make sure she and the baby were settled. He didn't linger unnecessarily, respecting her privacy and her need to feel independent, even in this moment of help. Before leaving, he quietly said, "Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps. You don't have to worry about anything tonight." That night, as the woman sat on the small hotel bed, watching her baby sleep, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in weeks. She thought about the stranger who had stopped to help, about the way he listened, the way he acted without expecting anything in return. She thought about how the world could be cruel, but also how kindness, even from one person, could restore hope. Meanwhile, Keanu quietly continued his day, checking in occasionally to make sure everything was fine without drawing attention or making it a spectacle. His concern was sincere, personal, and private. He wasn't seeking recognition. He simply wanted to see that his actions had made a real difference in their lives. The next morning he called again. He had arranged for additional support, transportation, to a local organization that helps single mothers find stable housing and job opportunities, temporary childcare, and access to medical care for the baby. He explained it simply to her, helping her understand the options, answering her questions patiently, and reassuring her that she wasn't alone in taking the next steps. She felt a mixture of hope and nervousness. This was all new to her. She had been on her own for so long that trusting someone, even someone kind, felt fragile. But Keanu's patience, his respect, and his genuine care slowly helped her believe that she could start over. They discussed small, practical things, what she needed to do first, how to reach out to the organization, and how to manage the baby's needs while working towards stability. He didn't take control of her life. He simply offered guidance and support, empowering her to make her own choices while knowing she wasn't alone. As the day went on, she began to see possibilities she hadn't imagined before. She could find a job without worrying about where the baby would sleep. She could get medical attention without fear. She could start planning for a future that felt real, not just a struggle to survive day by day. The thought was both exciting and terrifying, but she felt ready because someone had given her a foundation of safety and support. Keanu continued to check in, arranging practical solutions quietly behind the scenes. He didn't want media attention or praise. He just wanted to make sure that she and the baby had what they needed to move forward. He also made small gestures of kindness, ordering more essentials, arranging for temporary childcare, and ensuring that transportation to appointments would be available. Every step was calculated to provide independence and security, not dependency or pity. By evening, the woman was feeling stronger. She had a plan, she had a safe place for the night, and she had someone who believed in her ability to rebuild. She looked at her baby, holding it close, and felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the material help, but for the kindness, respect, and humanity she had been shown. Keanu's quiet, persistent care had transformed what could have been a temporary relief into the first step toward a lasting change. He didn't demand thanks or recognition. He simply offered his presence, his listening, and his actions. And that, for the woman and her baby, was more powerful than anything else. As night fell, the woman tucked her baby into the small crib, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in weeks. She thought about the man who had stopped for her, who had gone out of his way to ensure she and the baby were safe, warm, and fed. She whispered softly to the sleeping child, "Someone really cares about us, and it's going to be okay." That night, she slept more soundly than she had in a long time. The weight of fear lifted slightly, replaced with hope. For the first time, she could imagine a future that wasn't just about surviving, but about living. And for Keanu, it was another quiet day of choosing to see humanity, to act without expecting anything, and to make a real difference in a life that desperately needed it. The mother and baby would never forget this day, not because of who he was, but because of how deeply he cared when it mattered most. It wasn't fame or fortune. It was pure, simple human kindness. And that, as he quietly left to continue his own day, was enough.